The majority of things that women get praised for is actually a trauma response in disguise. Over-explaining, overworking, over-analyzing,
indispensability.
Yes.
Being indispensable.
Yes.
That's the ultimate woman.
Yeah.
Is the indispensable mother, the indispensable career woman, the indispensable friend.
Fuck. I was like that in my last relationship.
Like that everyone relies on you.
Yeah.
You will always be worthwhile.
Yes.
If everyone has to rely on you.
Can't be contained.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for bringing me some oil.
Yes. That has been on my mind to bring you. And I was like, this is the perfect day to do it.
Arise. Dude, this is so good. Why does it make you feel so good ASAP?
It's a heart expander. And it's citrus is just, I think of citrus as spontaneous joy in a bottle.
Oh,
and and so anytime I'm in a funk or I just need a lift, like kind of like an elevation or like an elevator in my mood. That's one of my favorite ones to select. Like I always think about when it comes to oils and like smelling, scent, because it's so profound in the brain. You get to choose your mood.
Yeah,
and that is a mood elevator. Like instant.
So how do you use this with breathwork, before or after?
I use it before.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
I use it before.
You get all ready.
So it's usually because I'm usually looking for abundance expansion and looking just to really get into the yumminess of the experience. And so that blend always does it for me. I also love that blend when someone's massaging me. Like when you never had a massage therapist, put it right. So that's one I'll always have with me to have them use.
That's a great idea.
Just to kind of feel like into that yumminess of that experience. And it just always transcends me to just this really blissful place.
It's the simplest things, It's the simplest things that are so transformational and so like, yes, it feels so good. I'm realizing this now more than ever, like the simple things around my home that I'm taking the time to do these days that I was quote unquote like too busy for because I was boss babying or whatever. Like it's like the simple moments of homemaking and taking a moment to like breathe in a new scent and feel into the body. Those moments are just so special. It's
enjoying the mundane.
Yes.
That's what it is.
Yes.
Because we're in the mundane every day.
Yes.
And, I think we get caught up, you're in the priorities, in the bigger thing, in the to-do, but like being in the mundane and enjoying it and, preparing Kingston's breakfast in the morning or being in the morning routine. And there's just moments that you get to create or you just get to savor that then become really beautiful and blissful. And we deserve and we get to experience joy anytime we want. It's available to us. And it's just a matter of perspective. It's just a matter of how we start to see our day. It can be like we have all these things to do, or there's this stuff I got to do, or we can see it as this opportunity of like, I get to, and I get to, especially when it's with family and people that you love, things that you get to like expand into joy.
It's funny we're talking about joy because I was journaling about joy the other day. Like, so we have love and we have gratitude, but then joy is this expression that feels ecstatic and childlike, And I was journaling about what are the times in my life where I feel joyful and what are the things that I do that activate joy. And I was really feeling into the sensation of joy. I'm like, joy is one of the coolest places that we can be energetically.
It is the place.
Dude.
As far as I'm concerned, it's the place to be.
Like, let's talk about it.
Yes. Yes, it is that. And where I think we can get to, like, I was thinking, like, how do I cultivate more of it? Yeah. And being a mom to my beautiful little toddler, watching him in his joy all the time, like that lights me up like to no end. Like even just seeing him swinging on a swing and just giggling.
Yeah.
I'm just like, that is so yummy.
So good.
That is so yummy.
It's so good.
And one of the things I've learned about cultivating it, because I'm so fascinated and I want it all the time as often as possible. There's this upward spiral with gratitude.
Yeah.
The more that we can be grateful, the more joy that we can cultivate. But it's a spontaneous feeling.
Yes.
It's not happiness.
Yes, it's different.
It's different. It's like a bubbling.
Yes.
Like of this like giddiness and bliss. It's a totally different emotion than happiness. And it's these spontaneous moments, but we get to cultivate more of it.
Yeah.
I think, and for me, it's been in the practice of in the mundane, of just like in the everyday. Like, how can I see this as a joyful experience? How can this like feel like effervescent?
Yes.
You know?
Yes, effervescent. I was going to say explosive, and then I thought about diarrhea, and I'm like, diarrhea is not joyful.
Oh, girl, it is.
Diarrhea.
I've had a hard time
cool.
finding a lot of joy around diarrhea this last week and a half. With my family being so sick.
Dude, diarrhea is the worst.
It's the worst.
It's the worst. But
so effervescent. I think just bubbles
is better than explosive. Effervescent
and
joy.
not gut bubbles.
But I like, and it's what I love being in the practice of is because there's certain things in life where you gotta actually be intentional about cultivating that energy of joy, right? Because if we're not intentional about taking the mundane and putting it into magical, then we won't experience the joy that is in every single present moment. And so I was journaling. I'm like, man, what activates my joy? Like, what are those like joy amplifiers or activators? And it's like, for me, it's like whenever I'm in a process of being in awe of things, like taking the time to be in awe, like you were talking about, like Kingston on the swing, right? Like, oh my God, that's like, there's a moment that if we don't miss it and we don't miss the point of that moment, we can actually turn it into something so magical. But then there's also, for me, it's like dancing and surfing and doing these things that feel like expressive, like full body orgasm expressive, you know?
Yeah. And I think it's that presence of being in. And it's often, I think it has a lot to do with activity, like surfing. I think a lot of people, the reason why they surf is because they love it. Like there's just joy and excitement around it. But I think it has a lot to do with our being present in our body, embodiment, and being in that lived present experience.
Yeah.
And so whether it's playing with Kingston or it's watching him do his thing or being a part of that, like I not only being in witness of it, but then also getting to experience myself.
Yeah.
And then self-care. I think self-care, we can really relish in taking care of ourselves and loving ourselves and that feeling really, really good. But you're right, it is very much intentional.
Yeah.
It's intentionality 100%. And I think gratitude, like having a beautiful practice every morning, can really elevate
Absolutely.
that intentionality. Remind us that, we get to feel this. We get to tap into this.
Yeah. Our mutual friend, Jen Hootie, is one of the most intentional people. And I really learned that practice from her. I remember probably like 12 years ago when we first started being friends, like she was just so intentional about gratitude and so intentional about how she spent her time and so intentional about the environments that she creates. And because of that, you know, she's built this beautiful life. Like there is such even, you know, we'll go out for dinner and it'll be like setting an intention before we consume the food. Like every moment, like, you know, again, going back to the
beach.
Yes.
We walked to the beach and we got a mini, like even 1 minute breath work of just in receptivity of being in that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. With her, I've learned that as well. Just because you can just walk to the beach and just look at the surfers or
100%.
whatever. And that's, but like dropping in.
Yes.
It's that dropping in experience that just transforms it.
And it's interesting, right? As we live in this hyper speedy world that is only getting quicker and quicker. Is it like just me or has this year like, I'm like, who's turning the fucking dial up right now?
How is it December?
Wow. What the heck? I was 13 yesterday, I swear. How am I?
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh.
Right. Like it's just speedy. And I was actually, Eric and I, we went on this 10-day road trip and I was not on my phone for most of the trip, which was so amazing. And I realized like, it'd be like 4:30 and I'd turn to Eric. I'm like, this has been the longest day ever in the best way because I was living to the beat of the earth and nature. And my pacing was congruent with nature and not my business or social media or other people's things or text messaging or whatever it is. I was just in coherence with the planet, and it like slowed down the time, right? Now, we don't have to go on a 10-day road trip in order to have that experience. We can.
It would be nice.
It would be so great. I'm like, I want to go again, actually.
Absolutely. So inspired by that.
Oh my gosh. But even like, I was chatting to someone on my team, and we were saying how even 3 minutes of intentionality of dropping into our bodies and just being like, what's here now? That energetic shift of just unhooking the mind from the chaos, getting into the body, like that can literally change the perspective of our entire day if we take the moment. Yeah. So
it's powerful. It's powerful, and it shifts everything. You know, we get caught up in all the stuff. And I was listening to one of your episodes, you know, especially being a CEO and being a problem solver.
Yeah.
You know, constantly problem solving, how you're caught in that.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm grateful to be able to be that person too. But it's a very different energy.
Yes.
Very different experience
Yes.
than just being able to be that like fully present, fully in your body, and just getting to savor those any moment.
Yeah. You know what mantra? I just remembered a mantra that someone told me, and then I remember that you were there when he told me that. A couple years ago, we did a Vivid Vision retreat, and Dimitri
Yes.
was there, and he said the mantra he uses is nothing's wrong.
Nothing's wrong. Yes, nothing's wrong. I have it written
Dude.
down.
That like really helps me a lot. Like just being like, Sam, there's nothing wrong.
Nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong.
It's medicine to my nervous system to hear that. Because you're right, as I was sharing that episode, like part of my role at Pause as the CEO is like, look for what's wrong, let's optimize, let's problem solve, let's do this, let's coach this person up. But if I just look at my whole organization and go, hey, actually, there's nothing wrong, and there's just tweaks in order to make things more efficient. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it's all about the rebrand. It's all about the rebrand. But yeah, I just thought
There's
that was a
nothing
real,
wrong.
there's
Oh,
nothing
it's
wrong.
so powerful.
Yeah.
Such a powerful moment. That it hit so hard.
Yeah.
And that I
like-
remember we were across the table from each other, I believe. And that was one of my favorites. And then one of my other ones is everything's working out for me.
Yeah.
Everything is working out for me. You know, I grew up and all I heard was nothing was working out ever. And I always think when mantras, you know, how you know they're profound and they shift is you can just feel that drop into your system. And that's always been one too, is like everything's working out for me.
Everything is working out for me. How do you deal with that when you feel like life is taking a gigantic diarrhea on your head?
I like it did. Yeah.
Speaking of diarrhea, as we're on the topic of diarrhea.
Oh my goodness. So I don't wish the Nova virus on any family, anybody. But it is a reframe. It's all our stuff.
Yeah.
It's my mama in my head. You know?
Get out of my head.
Yeah,
Becky.
just like nothing's working out, you know, and it's a reframe where it is all working out.
Yeah.
It's just how I get to see it.
Yeah.
It's what it is. And so having those reminders, tapping back in, doing breath, getting back into my body, that's always available.
Yeah.
It's always available. And anytime I'm in my stuff, like I feel like I was just recovering from this horrible vomiting disease that my whole family just went through, I knew we were going to get on the other side of it. I knew that everything was good. I knew that we had everything we needed. And even when I was in my stuff around it, because I was literally in bed for 5 days in a row. And I don't remember being in bed for 5 days in a row in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Like in bed, like couldn't get out. And I just remember thinking, I was like, you know what? We have everything we need. We're in our home. We're all good. We're going to feel better. And it's all working out.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, Eric, my fiance, is so amazing at looking for the lessons and the opportunity in every single thing. Right. So sometimes I'm like, shut up, just let me complain about this for a second.
Let me be in it. Let me be in my shit for a second.
Yeah. Like if I say something to him like, oh, babe, blah, blah, blah. He just looks at me and he goes, that's great. Like, that's good. That's good. And it's not dismissive, you know?
No, right.
It's actually like, no, he believes that this is a good thing. He's like, I'm so excited for you to find the lesson in this. And can you see the opportunities that are already here? And sometimes I'm like, I don't want to look for the opportunities.
I just want to be in it for just 1 second.
But it is beautiful. It's like in every single breakdown, there's so many breakthroughs. And I think it takes a certain type of mindset and soul set to be able to go, wow, this is happening for me, you know, in perfect timing. Like there's such divine timing in this exact thing happening right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, even in a reflection of this whole year, this has been one of my health journey. It's been one of the most humbling, brought me to my knees year. Even this little virus, I'm like, really? I'm done.
Yeah. I'm tapping out 2023.
We do not need anymore. I do not need to be brought to my knees anymore. I am so good. I have learned the lesson of surrender.
Yes. Exactly. Get out of here, Nova virus.
Exactly. But I checked in with that again. I was like, what's the lesson in this?
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, it is really surrender. And it's the reminder of it's all working out, that there is a divine timing to all of this. And we know that in our darkest moments is when we're going to experience the biggest transformations. I know no one's trying to hear that, but that was even this last week, it was just such a beautiful reminder to me of like, what is this here? Like, what is this here to teach me? You know, this is such another beautiful reminder of surrender, you know, and I get to lean into this.
Yeah. It's so interesting. Last week I had the absolute shock of my life, just news that I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like it was one of those moments where you're like, the fuck is happening, you know? And and it was like this somatic shock. At first I was like, oh, this is a joke. Like I literally thought it was a joke. I'm like, this must be a joke. And then it wasn't a joke. I'm like, oh, this is serious. This is actually happening. And it's the duality of like letting my body have the somatic experience of like, fuck, man, that's really shitty. Like that sucks so much. And then having the decision, because I really do believe it is a decision. It's a decision that we make, you know, because it's not our default ego reptilian brain wants to be like, this is awful and you're failing and this really sucks and no one likes you. And you know,
it's just a spiral.
Yeah. And so it's like, how do we interrupt the natural process of our reptilian brain? How do we interrupt that with wisdom to say, this is so divine and I'm so excited to see what's on the other side of that, as we're holding the somatic experience of like heartbreak, you know? It's like the heart is actually breaking and it sucks. And I think learning that lesson is in my experience, one of the greatest things that we can learn as humans.
And it gets to be a yes and.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you get to have that moment for a moment. And you get to transform. Like I don't ever want to diminish someone's that experience of just like the gut punch.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've all had those gut punch moments where we had to recalibrate, and even looking in hindsight of like what that transformed into. Yeah. You know, I think, you know, not only having beautiful tools that we can lean into, like breath, you know, meditation, and having the mantras, but then having people in our life that we can really anchor to as well. Mm-hmm. You know, that we can really connect into, especially when we're feeling like the floor kind of slipped from underneath us.
Yes, absolutely.
Like an Eric.
My steady Eddie, so logical all the time.
He's like, this is great. You're like, no, it's not.
He's the flag pole and I'm just the flag, you know? Like that's our relationship. I'm like, Wah! And he's like so steady. It's great. Sometimes I'm like, can you like wobble a little bit? Talk to us about what shaped you to being the woman that you are and doing the work that you're doing in the world, which is helping thousands and thousands of women with their health and their happiness, their well-being, their self-love, their self-care. What was the catalyst for you to get into doing this work?
Oh my goodness. Like how far back do I want to go?
Let's go all the way back. Let's go to the womb. I'm just kidding.
Ooh, would you want to go to the womb?
Yeah, let's go to the womb. I'm ready. Take me there.
Yeah, my mama got knocked up. Yeah. You know, when she was 19 years old, barely out of high school, was about to go to a prestigious college, and Catholic family. and knew she asked me many, many times if I would leave. She was like, "Please
What do you
leave."
mean leave?
She had a dance teacher, and I don't remember exactly what kind of spirituality the dance teacher said, but she said, if you don't want this baby,
Like communicating as you were in the womb.
Yeah, she's like, ask that little being to leave.
And wait, your mom told you this?
Mm-hmm. Well, I had.
Let's go. Let's go.
So before I got pregnant with Kingston, I really went on this beautiful journey of doing my best to heal as much generational and mother trauma as I could, because I really didn't want to bring a lot of that unconscious patterning into his experience.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that I learned when I had therapists and energy healers. I mean, I brought on
Let's go.
the gamut.
Get the team on. Let's go.
And I had one of these healers who's this beautiful, amazing mystic. She's like, you have this big, this on the mother side, this big wounding. She's like, and you weren't wanted. She told me, she's like, but you were determined to come.
You're like,
she's like,
I'm
and
getting
come
in there.
through. She's like, despite how much you were not wanted to come in, you were just like, it doesn't matter. Like so I told my
we
mom.
going. It's happening, bitches.
And my mom's like, what? She's like, I have to tell you something. And so she told me, yeah.
Stop.
Yes.
Dude, she told you that she did those practices.
My mama told me that she was doing the best she could to ask me to leave. She kept asking me to leave, and I guess abortion wasn't on the table. I don't know, around the time. And ultimately my mom had to marry my dad. It was a shotgun wedding, and I came in, and then a lot of trauma ensued after that. That poor woman, she just wasn't ready to be a mom. And so, yeah, it did definitely start in the womb.
There we go. There was a reason I asked that question.
Right?
That's wild, dude.
And it was my mama really struggled being a mom, and especially she was a single mama, and there was a lot of trauma, a lot of abuse, a lot of child abuse, and I didn't, you're as a child, you just adapt the best you can. And so I remember having just such vigilance as a child, and it progressively didn't get better. And to a point where I remember I left my father's house. I left my mom at 11, and then I went to my dad's, and I left my dad at a very early age as well. And I just remember being in survival mode for as long as I could. And, the body, it'll adapt for as long as it can. Thank God our bodies are just so miraculous and incredible. But ultimately, one of the pegs out, that goes down are, especially, in women's bodies, because we have so many hormones that are dictating everything, is our hormones begin to deregulate. Yeah. And so by the time I was 30, I had chronic fatigue issues. I wasn't able to even get out of bed. And when I really went to dive into what was going on with me, ultimately what I realized is it was trauma. Like I was being driven by it, and there's a lot of accolades, a lot of success was created with it. And, but my body was basically just completely burned out by the time I was 30. And I was like, I got a lot longer to live. Yeah. And so as I was doing a lot of kind of diving into the research as a functional doctor, I was like, okay, not only is my system deregulated, but there's these longstanding patterns that I'm operating from. And that really created this, my system to be so just, kind of on the fritz. And so I realized that at the time I didn't really understand the extensiveness of the kind of the trauma damage. And we just really, this was in 2009. Yeah. And I feel like we've really turned a corner there. But I also knew that there were so many other women that I was seeing with the same issues that I wanted to be able to support them with. Yeah. And that really has led me on this beautiful journey. And the more that I've tapped into it, I've continued to do more trauma work and more work around self-care and loving my body and trusting my system, but also knowing that our hormones are always in tandem with what's going on with us. I feel like they're just trying to catch up.
Like what's happening now? What's happening now?
Like you said, this busy life. Yeah. And so I just wanted to be able to support women in their journey as they moved through perimenopause into menopause and really owning their body, owning their truth, and also recalibrating themselves in a way that felt good and felt joyful and they felt energized. And so that's been my work. But yeah, it stemmed from very, from early.
So talk to me about like that 30-year-old age where you're like, I recognize that I'm operating from trauma. I think what I find so fascinating and so interesting is there's many women who are very successful in whatever areas, right? And there just isn't the awareness that their fuel is trauma. And I have, as I'm sharing this, I'm like, I remember that, I remember my first couple of companies. I fully built those companies from a trauma response. I fully built them from a place of, am I good enough? I want to be acknowledged. I want to be recognized. I want to feel like I'm worthy. I want to feel like I'm loved. Like my background is like a performer and a stunt double and an actress. And so it's like you're loved for what you do. So it's like I stayed in that and I didn't know until I knew.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That your worth was predicated on your next success.
Yeah. And so it kept me in this addiction of
it's an addiction.
Achievement,
Yeah.
and
it's a stress response addiction.
Yes. Yes. And, I remember I was in Florida at a conference called Date with Destiny by Tony Robbins. Have you gone to any of?
Yeah, I think I don't know if we were there the same
that's right.
one.
We talked about
I
that.
think we were there like one after, we were within, I was like maybe 2 Date with Destinies after you.
Yes. Okay.
In Palm Beach.
Yeah, that's it. And he was like, yo, he didn't say yo, but he was
Did you get called on?
Oh my God. He called on me all the time. Like I did like a year of like the platinum partnership or whatever.
Yes.
And for some reason.
Well, you're in the front row, girl.
Yeah. For some reason, he just kept calling on me. I'm like, fuck, he sees me. But I remember we were doing this thing and he's like, he says success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And I remember sitting there in Florida at Date with Destiny and he said that and I just felt my whole body like, oh God, like that's exactly where I am. I grew this company. I had lots of success, but like, was I fulfilled? No. Like I was making everyone else happy. Like my business was called Hungry for Happiness. I was making everyone else happy, but at the end of the day, I wasn't happy. But I didn't realize it until I realized it, of how.
And it's usually a Mack truck moment.
Dude.
It's usually health.
Yes.
That's what brought me to my knees. That's and even it may take a couple.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if that was a health incident for you.
I don't think so. Not that time. I've had other health wake-up calls, but what was the health wake-up call for you during that time?
For me, I mean, I was, I remember it's from as long as I remember, even in high school, we had like a 5-minute recess to get from class.
Yeah.
I was running into meetings in those 5 minutes. I wore tennis shoes to school. I know most kids wore tennis shoes to school, but I ran in high school from one thing to the next. Like and so I just remember running through life for probably 15 years until one day I woke up and I couldn't even I couldn't wake up and get out of bed. I had patients. I had 20 patients that day. And I was like, I remember willing myself out of my bed and like kind of like clawing my way up to stand up to brush my teeth and wash my face. And I was like, how am I going to get there? And that was a defining moment for me. I was like, oh my God, I'm in trouble. I'm in big trouble.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the moment. And again, I remember it was so prescriptive. I was like, okay, I need to do this. I need to eat this way. And I need to do yoga and I because I was still in survival, but I was just trying to heal myself out of that. But then I just landed right back on the floor again. And it took me 3 years to finally not land on the floor. And I was like, what is happening? I was like, oh my God, I've got this core driving system that I'm just constantly turning back on, this unconscious programming that's just, I'm doing all the things the same way.
Yeah.
And that was finally, it was many, like falling flat on my face, feeling horrible that I finally woke up to what was going on.
It's so interesting, right? It's like, okay, let's pay attention. Because it's like once the health goes and like, it's like a health scare. When it's emotional, you can hide it. You're like, oh no, everything's fine.
You can be busy.
Don't look over here. Everything's great over here. But when it becomes physical and it has an impact on your ability to actually do your work and interact with life, that's when it becomes a wake-up call, And my wish for everyone is like, listen to the nuances, listen to the whispers before they smack you in the head. It was interesting. Do you know Pam, the astrologer here in Encinitas?
I don't.
Okay. She's like pretty rad. I mean, I think Eric thinks this is all bullshit.
I can't wait. And then I also need her info.
I'll give you her info. She's like, has like a year waiting list. So I just book in with her once a year. But she was telling me like, yo, in your last life, you were a Virgo and you were a workaholic. And so in this life, that is your biggest lesson, is not being a workaholic and working with a regulated nervous system and always prioritizing, you know, your health and your family and your friends and your partnership and your community over work. And so it's interesting because I love what I do, you know, and I, as you do, right? It's like, I love what I do. And also I can feel the old pieces, right? That are like of the old, like how I used to operate. And it was my identity. I'm like, I'm a super hard worker. I work 16 hours a day. It's like, no, that was all trauma. And I can feel that part of me is still present. I'm so aware of it. So it doesn't posture as truth. I can really be like, no, that's an inner child part that's just like afraid. But it's like it can flare, you know?
Girl, I don't know if it ever goes away. I don't think it ever goes away. I think it's more, you get better at being aware.
You just change your relationship to it. Yeah.
Like I always say, who's driving the bus? Is it my 12-year-old self?
Yeah.
You know, that little girl who was like, I have to take the wheel right now and nobody's looking out for me but me. Like, she loves to show up and take over.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'm always trying to be, okay, who's here?
Yeah. What's happening? Who's
trying to get the wheel right now?
Yeah.
And I think that it's more of it's an awareness, and it's the choosing, it's intentionality.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I've learned. Like, how do I not, if that is the deepest running program in my system, is that program, because that's what got me through some of the
survival.
Yeah, it was what got me through childhood and some of the hardest times. And it is the thing my body knows the most. You know, if it ran me for 25 years, you know, like, how do I become aware? And how do I get to choose intentionally to operate from joy and gratitude and not from survival?
Yeah.
And so it's a constant choosing. I think for me, that pattern wants to come up, I would say, almost daily.
Yeah.
And
so interesting. It's like right there in the wings, like ready to take center stage. I'm ready for my moment. Let me in.
And honestly, for me in my system, at times, it can feel so good.
Yeah.
And
it's like fuel.
It's fuel.
Like,
I call it get it done energy.
Yeah.
Or so I used to call it. Now I call it trauma energy. People are like, gosh, Mariza, you're good at following up, and man, you always get back to me, and da 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 da. Like, how did you do that? And I'm like, it's trauma.
It's trauma.
It's trauma. You want to know how I am that way? All these
just
attributes, people are like, oh my gosh, like I can depend on you. You're so dependable. You're so reliable.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's trauma.
But dude, it's like the majority of things that women get praised for is actually a trauma response in disguise. Over-explaining, overworking, over-analyzing,
indispensability.
Yes.
Being indispensable.
Yes.
That's the ultimate woman.
Yeah.
Is the indispensable mother, the indispensable career woman, the indispensable friend.
Fuck. I was like that in my last relationship.
Like that everyone relies on you.
Yeah.
You will always be worthwhile.
Yes.
If everyone has to rely on you.
Okay, how do we this is rampant in my community. As you're saying it, I'm like, I'm hearing them. I can hear them be like, yeah, that's me.
No, yeah, it's praise. It's the ultimate praise.
So how do we unravel from that?
You give zero fucks. I don't know. Like,
you just snort some of this essential oil.
Oh my God, you have to reclaim you, right? Because gosh, if you're indispensable to everyone, like, how do you even prioritize you?
Dude, you know, it was interesting. It's like when I broke up the addiction to I am loved for the things that I do, not for who I am. Like, that was in there. It's like, I dance and I get a reward, and I book a thing and I get a thing, and I build a business and I get love. It's like the simplicity of just being lovable as me without having to do anything. That was such a foreign territory. I'm like, I don't understand. What do you mean? Like, I just sit here and you guys love me and I don't have to do anything. It was a complete rewiring of my nervous system and a complete reorienting to life itself. But then there was evidence for that, you know? Like, I'm just going to sit on my big ass and I'm not going to do anything, you know? And
And be loved for it.
And be loved for it. And like nothing actually changes. It's just the fear that we have, you know?
I know people are listening right now and it's so uncomfortable.
Yes.
You know?
Can you hear that awkward silence with all the listeners?
Yeah. It is, I mean, it is the ultimate rewiring, you know, and that's what I see play out. I mean, I saw it in every female patient I ever took care of. I don't think there was one I ever didn't see it in, and women in my community. I you know, when I think about the physical manifestations, which a lot of what people come to me for, I'm like, it's just so much deeper than that.
Yeah.
That what's playing out.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's why I'm loving that we're having this conversation. I mean, I think we just keep having these conversations and just opening the door for what's possible in terms of how can we reposition the way that we think about ourselves? How can we love ourselves and trust ourselves just who we are, and start to like let go of that that need to succeed or that need to show up to feel any level of worthiness.
Yeah.
I just think it's an unlayering that we get to be on this journey the whole time we're here.
Because the whole notion of being lovable as is really our true nature. You know, everything else is a conditioned symptom of what we think love is. Love is love. Love is this present moment. Love is everything and nothing. It's not a doing, you know, love is a being. And getting with that in a world that validates the hustle is hard sometimes.
Well, and hopefully passing down that legacy to our children, you know, we're so mindful about, I mean, obviously you just want to praise your child, but also just letting them know that they're loved just for who they are and just being fully present in that.
Yeah.
Is something that my Alex and I work really hard on because it is intentionality. If this is the way you were brought up, this is the way that you feel like, you know, there's this fear around like, this is how I get loved, you know, the unraveling of that. But then, you know, I really am intentional about, you know, not allowing those unconscious patterns to come through, you know, for Kingston. And I think that's one of the ultimate, not only lessons for myself, but hopefully that I get to hopefully express and like live through with my son.
You're one of the most present and intentional parents that I've met. It's been really fun witnessing you and how you raise your child. And I'm curious the impact raising him has on your inner child.
Oh my gosh. Such a massive impact. It's amazing how much you find yourself parenting your inner child as you're parenting your child.
I can't imagine.
And it's a beautiful experience. And it can be a little bit painful. There can be a little bit, I mean, again, I think everything's a yes and, where I think some people really feel a bit of a grieving process as they move through the beautifulness of watching your child grow up. And, you know, we're in the magic of toddler land right now, and it is so magical. And, you know, and then some of the stuff kind of comes up about like, oh my gosh, what it was like when I was a toddler.
Right. That's what I'm curious about.
And you get to move through that and heal that. And I recommend if it's a lot, having support around it.
Yeah.
You know, we get to have support. We get to have, you know, if it's a therapist or it's a best friend or whoever it is that gets to move us through that. So yeah, it is a beautiful process.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've had a couple grieving moments of like, oh my gosh. And you know, I cannot tell you how many times my mom has apologized to me as she's watched me raise Kingston. She watched me, the way that I talk to my son, how I approach conversations and moments when he's having difficulties and he's working through his big emotions. And she's just like, I'm so sorry. I just had no idea.
Ooh,
I didn't
I got
know.
Goosebumps.
And so I would say every time my mom comes over and watches us with our son, watches me with Kingston, she's just profusely apologizing.
Really? And what's that experience like for you as she does that?
I just have so much grace, you know, extra grace required, and so much compassion for my mom. My heart breaks for her in that moment too, of just like, I can imagine it feels very painful for her as well. But then I'm just also so grateful that I get to do it in a way that feels so true and feels so loving and feels so joyful.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm so inspired by women who are able to really break the generational trauma that exists in their family and put it in a whole new trajectory. And you are one of these people that I look up to in that sense of like, oh my God, just hearing your life story and your upbringing and how you left home at 11 and then went to your dad's and then left and then fended for yourself at such a young age. And now you're raising this absolutely amazing young child and giving him like everything that his little system and soul needs in order to be a thriving human. It's so fascinating, and it's just, again, it's like going back to the decision, like somewhere along the line, you made a decision. You're like, nope, this is where it ends. And I'm going to be the one to do the work on myself and heal, my emotionality and my trauma so that I don't recreate that. Because it's so easy to see that in family lines.
Oh man. And I'm still seeing it again playing out for me. I even though again, like I said, some of these patterns, they're not going to go anywhere. I don't want my son to see me just in my work.
Yeah.
Just in, and not to say, like I said, we love our work. I love my mission. I love showing up to serve.
Yeah.
I love to show up to serve so many moms and women, and I hope that that's my legacy in a lot of ways. But also, I want my son to get me fully present all the time, and I want him to see that, we're connected and that the joy of him being on this planet with me is what matters the most.
Yeah.
I mean, because when we pare it all down, what really matters, and yes, mission and service matters, but being present with the people we love, experiencing joy with the people we love, like that's what it's all about. And I want my son to I want that to be his memory.
Yeah.
I want that to be his childhood.
Yeah.
Like that's what I want for him. That's what I want for me.
Totally.
100%. And so, as much as he gets to see mom in service and in mission, in the work that I get to do, that's not what I want his memory to be at all.
Yeah.
I want his memory to be all of these beautiful things that we did together and adventure, and being present.
Yeah.
And so I find myself still like very intentionally doing my best to working on kind of like healing these patterns and acknowledging them and seeing them, when they start to pop up.
Yes.
For not only for myself, obviously, I think when you become a mom, like it becomes so much about your child, but like for me and for him,
I'm reading right now Mary Morrissey's new book, Brave Thinking.
I just got it because I saw it on Insta.
You saw my story?
Yeah, I took a picture immediately.
Mary Morrissey is
magical.
Shout out Mary Morrissey. You are absolutely amazing. But one of the things, what I love about her work is it's profoundly simple and makes us go, oh, right, duh. Right. And one of the things that I love that she says is just notice what you're noticing. Notice what you're noticing, in your thoughts. Notice what you're noticing and just realize like, wow, those are just neurons. They're just firing. Like things are just happening and it's not about me, and I'm going to take a moment and notice what I'm noticing and rewire that thought and put it back into one that is an empowering thought that allows me to be congruent with where I'm going. And even in the body, like notice what I'm noticing. Okay, well, if that energy comes up of like workaholic or overworking or overdoing or overpowering or over anything, what is that energy? What does that part of me need? Just notice what we're noticing. And even just the awareness of, oh, this is happening right now. We don't even have to do anything about it. Just notice what we're noticing. And that's enough to create the alchemy in the body to shift it back into a place of like balance, coherence. So I'm curious, with your line of work, you work a lot on the physical.
I do.
Like women come to you and they're like, how do you help them find the emotional, if that's part of your work versus, because what tends to happen in my experience with like the people in my life, it's like, let's put some Band-Aids on some bullet wounds here, right? It's like, do you help them find like the core emotional issue, or do they like talk to me a little bit about that.
I don't work with a lot of people one-on-one unless it's like friends and family. But in my programs, I build in a lot of this. Every book I've written talks about trauma and
how many books have you written now?
8.
What? 8. You're wild. I'm like, okay, I gotta get the
trauma.
next. It's called Trauma. That's so good. That's Trauma in Action, you guys. 8 book deals. There we go. I love you.
That's how you write 8 books.
I need some more trauma because I'm dragging my heels on my next book. Can I get another dose of trauma to get this book done? Just kidding.
And so, I just call out the elephant in the room, and a lot of on my podcast, I talk a lot about it. I bring on experts to talk about it. I try to bring awareness to it as much as possible. But that's what I would say is it's built into my programs. I talk about it in the books, just to bring in where is this coming from? If women continue to find themselves like in the physical, right, in these kind of Mack truck moments of like, how did I get here? Yeah, and why does this keep happening? And then I hope that there's a realization of like, let me dive deeper into this, of like where is this core wound, or where's this core belief, or where's this core pattern that I find myself in survival mode, or I find myself constantly in this do mode that's just wearing me down. So
when you have a physical ailment going on in your body, do you go emotional first? Like, what's your pathway of?
I would say I go physical first, and then I am quickly then reminded. I'm like, this is absolutely an emotional piece.
Interesting. Do you believe that every physical ailment is tied to an emotional trauma?
100%.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
I think there's always an emotional component.
Yeah.
Because we're energy.
Yeah.
Our every cell in the body is energy, and so in order for that energy is often, if it's diminished in any way, there's always a psychological and emotional component to that work. And so I think, especially if you're not seeing resolution, I think that's something you get to tap into as well.
It's interesting having this conversation with like our parents, like my parents and Eric's parents, and it's like we're speaking a different language sometimes.
It's always the doctor. It's a specialist. It's a pill. It's a medication. It's always there's a physical solution to that physical manifestation. Yeah, it is really hard for that. Yeah, even I would say grandparents, older parents. It's a very different way of looking at health and looking at vitality. We are very much shifting. And again, a lot of the women that I'm working with in their 40s and their 50s that are still feeling like, okay, it's only my hormones. It's just that. It's just my blood sugar. It's just my metabolism. But those are manifestation. I mean, you think about the manifestation of stress, which is a physical manifestation of trauma, and what that does in the system. I always say that stress is the most insidious driver of disease in the body. And most of our stress is coming from perceived stress or past traumatic, incidences that are just in our body, in our system, that we just haven't healed yet, that we didn't even know that we could tap into. Yeah.
And stress is sort of the socially acceptable word for trauma. Yeah. Right? It's like, I'm stressed. We're just traumatized. We'll just own it. Let's just own it. Oh my goodness. This has been such an enriching, joyful, beautiful conversation. Where can we all find you?
I would say the best place, my favorite place is my podcast, Energized with Dr. Mariza.
So good.
Also, the Instagram is where I love to play as well. So at Dr. Mariza, at DrMariza. So those would be my 2 favorite places. My books are on Amazon. If you are struggling with hormones, you want to dive deeper into that, you can find all the books on that there. So those are my places.
And your books are incredible.
Aww.
That trauma did you good.
No, I mean, it can be a yes and. Yeah. There's some gratitude I have for it, for sure. Yeah. But I'm also so grateful that I get, there's an elevated version of me that gets to just love me and to be in joy and to be in gratitude, because gosh, that feels so good. And I'm all about, I love feeling good.
Dude, I know. It's so good. It's really amazing. Last thing I'll share is the contrast that you have had in your life has been truly profound. Like the upbringing that you've experienced, which was traumatic and intense, and then seeing the life that you are building now and what you've built and your business and your family and just everything is just so inspiring for people, who sometimes can be identified by their upbringing or by their story. And you didn't let that define you. You created an entirely new identity and story and have built something truly remarkable and so beautiful. And so thank you for being such an example for this world.
Thank you. I'm just like taking that in. We get to rewrite it.
Yeah.
We get to create it. And I think that was one of the biggest things I learned probably in my 30s was that, I get to define this. It gets to be what I want it to be. Yeah. And that to me is probably one of the most beautiful lessons I've learned is like, life gets to be what we want it to be. And life gets to feel good and life gets to be love and life gets to feel blissful. You get to have that.
Yeah.
We all get to have it. No matter what has happened in our life, no matter what we've been through, no matter what we're going through right now, joy cannot be contained.
Woo! On that note. Thank you so much for being here. This has been so good.
Thank you, love.
I love you.
Can't be contained.